Good morning. Welcome to Homeschool STEM, and we've got a new project for you today. We're going to be designing a pass-through port for my CNC machine that I have been rebuilding over the past several months. We designed a case to put it in an enclosure to keep all the excess material that comes off the CNC router from going all over the shop. And we wanted to hook up the enclosure to a shop vac. Well, to do that without having to have the doors open or a separate section cut out of the box, I wanted to design a pass-through port where I could attach this pass-through port to my enclosure and then attach my vacuum line. So we're going to do that today. Simple, easy project. Hopefully, everybody will enjoy doing it. We're, again, going to be using XDesign on the 3D Experience platform, as you can already see. Got things set up. We've opened up and logged into 3D Experience. I opened up just a general file, but we're going to come up here under the Design Manager, and we're going to rename our project here. And I'm just going to call it Pass-Through Port. And you can see that changes the name on it. We need to start with a backing. We need a base piece to begin our project. So to do that, let's work from the Z-plane. Click on the Z-plane and open up a sketch, and we've got our grid system. So we're ready to begin drawing. I want to make this pass-through port as simple as I can and as functional as I can. So I need to have a base plate that I can physically attach to the plywood case of my enclosure. So to do that, I'm going to use my Let's Draw a Rectangle to start with. Draw at any size, because we're going to go back and reset our dimensions. And you can see we're working in inches. So let's come over and select our dimension tool, and let's make this plate 3 inches, and let's make it 2.5 inches wide. Gives us something to work with there. Let's scroll in using our mouse wheel and get a better look at this. First thing I want to do is I need to extrude this. All I have now is just a standard rectangular box. So I'm going to go down to Features, and I'm going to select my Extrude tool. And as you can see, it shifts it over to a 3D view, so you can see that it's suggesting that I make this 1/4 inch thick, and that just happens to be the right size. Now I can make this whatever size I wanted. I could make it 1/2 inch. I could make it 3/4 inch, whatever I felt I needed. But I think 1/4 inch will do it, so we're going to make it 1/4 inch extrusion. It's going to be a solid extrusion. So there we go. So we've got our base piece. So now we need to have. Obviously, for this to be a pass-through, we need to have something for our vacuum hose coming from our shop vac to attach to. So let's go back over and take a look at the front view here, and we need to put a circular hole through there that we can plug our vacuum hose into. So we're going to start off with a 2-inch hole. So we're going to come down below back to our sketch. Let's draw a circle. Now notice that it changes here, and it's asking us what plane we want to work on. So I'm going to click that front plane. And I'm going to estimate where to put my hole. Wow. Some of you are probably saying estimate. Why would you do that? Well, you can do it a couple different ways. I could have come in here and taken and drawn a line through from corner to corner and found my exact center, or I can estimate. Either way, whatever makes you happy. How accurate you feel you need to be. When I click on my circle, and I'm going to draw a circle, and again, draw at any size, because then we're going to go back to our dimension and we're going to set this as a 2-inch circle. Right now, it's just a 2-dimensional flat circle. I need to extrude that, so I have some material to work with. I'm going to extrude it out, and I'm going to, if I right-click on my mouse and hold down that right button, I can move this around, revolve it. And you can see right now, in the Extrude tool, I plugged in 1/4 inch from my base plate thickness, so it automatically picked up on that and put that 1/4 inch in there again. But I need it to be a little bigger, so I have a little material to work with. So I'm going to make this extrusion 2 inches. As you can see, it gives me a display that shows me where that 2 inches is or will be. So I'm adding solid material. And there I go. Now if you notice, my lines that I used to find my center disappeared. So I don't have to worry about going back and taking those off. So let's turn this back so I'm looking straight at it again. Now that's going to be where I plug in my vacuum hose into this pass-through. But right now it's solid material, so I need to cut another hole. Keyword here is cut through this material so that my vacuum hose can actually suck the air and debris out of my case. So to do that, I'm going to come back. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that I can get a better look at it. I need to draw another circle. So let's go back to Sketch, Circle. And again, it's asking me what plane I want to work in. And when I click on that front plane, it changes to where now it's ready to draw a circle. And again, here we go. Same as before. I can randomly put my circle in there, or I can come back and again draw my crosshairs from corner to corner. So I can find my exact center. Now there's a couple different ways you can do that. I find it just as quick to draw two simple lines. So I'm coming over to my circle, find my center. And I'm drawing another circle inside of that bigger 2-inch circle. And again, doesn't have to be exact right now. So I've got my circle. The key here, and this is one of the key measurements on this because I'm plugging in my vacuum hose into this. So it's got to be big enough in diameter that my vacuum hose will slide into it. Now the vacuum hose that I'm using is a 1 3/4 inch outside diameter vacuum hose. So this hole has to be bigger than 1 3/4. And a mistake that some people make is that, oh, great, I'm using an 1 3/4 vacuum hose. I can make it an 1 3/4. No, it's the same size. It's not going to slide in. So I need to make this hole slightly bigger. And what I usually do is I usually go 200ths, 300ths, whatever you're comfortable with on this diameter size. So I know I'm working with 1 3/4, so I need to get down and use my dimension tool, and I'm going to make this 1.78 inches in diameter. All right, that's going to leave me some material for the wall of the vacuum port. Now, if you're not using 1 3/4 inch vacuum hose, maybe you're using 2-inch, then that's going to change this outside diameter. You're going to need to make this circle bigger, which is going to increase the size of your inside circle. So these two measurements are based on the size of vacuum hose that you're using, and there's various different sizes. You can get 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/2, 1 3/4, 2-inch, 2 1/2. It depends on what brand of shop vac you purchased. Mine just happens to be 1 3/4. So I'm making this 1 7/8 with just a little bigger, and it's going to fit in there tight. But this is still solid material, so I need to go back down here under Features, and I want to extrude cut that material. And right now, as you can see, it shows me it's going to cut through. Now I made this piece or this extrusion 2 inches long, but I have a 2-inch long extrusion plus an inch, a 1/4 of an inch on that back plate, and I need to cut all the way through that center material and also my back plate. I need that hole to go all the way through. So under direction, I'm going to tell it through both so that it's going to go through both pieces of material. It's solid, but I'm cutting it. Cut through. And now as you can see, I have a hole that goes all the way through. All right. So I've got the hole sized to where my vacuum hose will slide into it. Now I need some way to fasten that base plate to my cabinet. And to do that, let's go back and work on the Z-axis again. What we're going to do is we're going to come through here and put 4 holes, 1 on each corner. To do that, you can either come down under Features and you can use the hole feature and design your holes and put them in there. Or since this is a simple basic drawing, you can go back to Sketch and draw using your circle. It's going to ask me what plane I'm drawing on. I click on that, and I'm going to draw my circle. And again, any size, because then I'm going to come back to my dimensioning tool, and I'm going to size that. I'm going to size that for basically a number 8 carriage bolt, but I want it to be tight initially rather than so that I can get a good tight fit. So I'm going to make this hole 0.125 inches, which is 1/8 of an inch. Now I got that in that corner, but I need to get it centered. So my next dimension is going to be from the center to my outside edge. And I'm going to place that at 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to go center to the top edge, and I'm going to place that 1/4 of an inch. So I've got it 1/4 of an inch in, 1/4 of an inch down, and 1/8 of an inch hole. So now I'm going to do that again at each one of my corners. Now notice as I hover my circle tool, you can see there's a dotted line that forms right off the center of my previous hole. That's great. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to draw my circle. Resize it. 0.125. Double check my measurement. I'm a little bit off there on my edge, 0.25. And I should be, because I used that dotted line when I drew it, I should be at 1/4 of an inch. Onto the side, and I am. So I need to do that. On my third hole, see how my dotted line comes in. Draw my circle, resize, and if you're real good, you can use the digital print there too. Draw it at that 1/4 inch. Double check my distance to my edge. And again, because I followed the dotted line, this dimension will be 1/4 of an inch. So I have one more hole to draw. There's my dotted line. Draw my circle. Size my hole. Double check my measurement. A little bit off there. So let's fix that, and let's double check on the side edge. And I'm a little bit off there, so let's fix that. All right, so I have my 4 holes drawn. Now, right now they're just drawings. I need to extrude cut that, so let's go to Features. Use my extrude cut. And notice that because I drew all 4 of them, before I extrude cut it, before I cut. Those holes, they all 4 are highlighted, and I can cut all of them at the same time. I could have cut each one separately as I drew it. You can do that. And in some cases, depending on what you're drawing and where you're drawing it, you have to. But in this case, it highlights all 4. My distance is, it says 2 inch, but remember I'm only going through that base plate, so it's only 1/4 of an inch. But I want to make sure it goes all the way through, so I'm going to tell it 1/2 inch just to make sure. I've got a solid piece, and I'm cutting. And I now have my holes all the way through. All lined up ready to go. So what I have is I now have my pass-through ready to go with a 2-inch diameter outside measurement. So when I cut my hole in my plywood cabinet, if I cut it at 2 inches, it's going to be a pretty tight fit, but most hole saws give you a little when you cut them. They can be, some of them real accurate, and it'll be too tight. Some of them will not be. So, my hole saw, I cut it 2 inches, and there was just enough set in the teeth on the hole saw that it made it just a hair over 2 inches, and this piece slid right in. So depending on your results on your hole saw, you may have to do a little filing, do a little sanding to make it fit. You don't want it to be a 2.5 inch hole that you're fitting this into, because now you've got space for air to pass through as your vacuum is running. So the only one we haven't done is we need to save this. So I'm going to save as. And it's going to save it into my collaborative space on my 3D Experience platform, and I've called it my pass-through port. And click Save, and it's going to save it. Now I need to get this over to where I can 3D print it. You could machine this on your CNC machine if you wanted to. It's just as easy to 3D print it. So after you saved it, you want to export. And you want to put it as a file on disk. And your file format for your 3D printer needs to be STL format. Some 3D printers, some slicer software will pick up on the Solidworks format. Some of them will do a step format. Some of them will do the XDesign 3D XML, depending on the manufacturer, but they all will accept the STL format. So it's going to save that or export that, and you can save that to whatever location you need to. And it will export it as an STL. Now, as far as settings for your 3D printer, because this is for a vacuum port, most standard 3D printer software will allow you to adjust your infill. And I set the infill for this piece because it's going to be used quite a bit. I set it at a 50% infill, which, of course, uses more material and it uses a longer print time. But it also gives you a more solid piece because you're going to be sliding that vacuum hose into this inner part of your port. You don't want it to crush. You don't want to get too much wear and tear on it to where it hollows itself out or deforms and you lose vacuum. If you want to try it the first time on, like a 5% infill, just make sure you've got all your measurements correct, absolutely, because it saves you some material. But for your final piece, I went 50% and it worked just fine. And then, of course, you're using either carriage bolts or a wood screw to attach this through your hole in your cabinet, and then you're attaching to your cap. Okay, hopefully, everybody found this project helpful. Give it a try. Put your comments down below and see what you think. If you make adjustments to this for yours and you find a better way to do it, that's great. If you like this type of project, you want to see more, make sure you click on the subscribe button and like this video, and we will see you next time.